Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at McDonald's cups and fry containers from the 1990s for basketball-related, basically NBA and USA Dream Team related cups. And I know it's kind of an unusual topic for me to cover here on the Sports Card Professor because this isn't really a sports trading card kind of affair, but actually this is very much a part of the sports memorabilia time. This was something that we did collect a lot, and the fact is that it was really a ubiquitous part of our experience. At the time, the way that these cups interlaced into our lives was very distinctive to the time, and for those of us who were there at the time, we kept quite a few of these as collectibles. In most cases, we probably lost them over time, but thankfully, they're still around to be collected to basically put back together pieces of your childhood now. So that's kind of a fun thing. And I'm talking about the plastic cups, not the wax cups, they're too disposable. They're not really all that collectible. As well, special edition glasses, the actual glass ones, that's something I want to talk about at another time. This is just the kind of stuff that they were handing out to you when you were actually at the restaurant. And just so that you know, to be clear, this is not sponsored by McDonald's at all. I mean, at all. They like to pretend that they know nothing about their history and basically leave it up to us to tell the history of their marketing, which I think is a load of crap that they don't know, but they don't want to be involved. So, all right, fine, we're on our own. And there are going to be a number of things that I'm not necessarily going to know or be able to pick up on over time. So if you know additional information, please, by all means, let me know in the comments below additional information so that we can basically get the rest of this story. But this is pretty much the story as it is. So with all the house cleaning out of the way, let's basically head on into this. And it basically begins with the fact that McDonald's did a really good job, especially in the 1970s, of becoming a cornerstone of pop culture. And so in the 1980s, they were always kind of at the forefront, really driving forward and making sure that they were a critical part of people's everyday lives, especially with kids. In fact, in the 1980s, McDonald's was very much the birthday spot. It was... all the stores had cakes on hand so that if you set up a party, they would actually have a McDonald's cake there for you. And you'd go into McDonald's all the time and there'd be some party with kids over on the side. It wasn't just the playgrounds. They really leaned heavily into it. So the whole marketing of the company was to be at the forefront. It was basically McDonald's and Toys R Us. Those were the big companies for kids. But across the whole span of the pop cultural experience, they made sure that they were right there at the front. And every company was kind of competing. So for Star Wars fans, for instance, we remember the Burger King glasses, and Wendy's and Taco Bell. Everybody would get into some sort of marketing. That was just standard for everybody. And McDonald's loved to line up with the Olympics. That was one of the big things that they did. So they were the official whatever of the Olympics. But every year they did that. And basically, whenever they would print their cups or their Big Mac containers or the fry containers, whatever, that's real estate where you can put whatever you want. And so they would always put the Olympic logos somewhere on it. So when you went to the restaurant you were eating, you were surrounded by Olympic stuff. And it was always kind of a reminder that the Olympics was there. And then obviously a subconscious relationship between the Olympics and the store, the restaurant. So they were always doing that, 84, 88, it was common. And they would also use the real estate on the cups to great advantage by putting, say, pictures of the swim team or the track and field team or maybe archery, I don't know. But they would go ahead and put an image on there. So just to kind of really enunciate the association with the sports that were being played. And in 1992, something really special happened because the Dream Team came into existence. And this was because the Olympics finally allowed pro athletes to compete in the Olympics, which heightened things. The Olympics have been getting a little bit boring simply because the star power of professional athletes was so big and the Olympics just was really waning. And so they decided to really enhance that. And if you want to know more about the Dream Team, I've done a video talking about Dream Team cards, and so I get more into it. But basically, the idea with the Dream Team was the fact that this was the first time that imaginary team of the greatest players on the planet were able to come together and be one team. And all of a sudden, we actually had that. And it was this amazing thing because your fantasy becomes a reality. And just the thrill of that, who cares what the competition is? The competition's not going to stand a chance. It didn't matter. We got to see these guys all together. And so that was the thing that really drove everybody. And it was kind of a nationwide craze. Now, for the Olympics, the way that sponsorships work is you have the Olympics, you have the USA team, and then you have each of the teams within the USA team. So you have the track and field team, you have the swimming team, you have the rowing team, you have the ski team, and then you have the basketball team, you have the baseball team. They're all individual teams. So the cyclists, they have their sponsorship. Rowing has its sponsorship. Track and field has its sponsorship. So that means that McDonald's was the sponsor of the Olympics, but they also made a special sponsorship with the USA Dream Team basketball team specifically, which was an additional investment of money. They had to put more money into it. And so you're really going to play this up. And they used it to full effect. What they did was they created these cups. And the cups are really quite impressive cups. They didn't do, so for those of you not familiar with the sizes at McDonald's, they had their small and they had their large size, and then they created what they called super size. And the super size is basically you take all the big stuff and you make it even bigger. Because let's face it, what's better than all of this sugar? And more sugar is always better. I believed that as a kid, and I'm still trying to pretend that I believe it today. But really, what could be worse than having a big cup like this? Okay, no bathroom stops for a long time, that could be worse. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was it was just always, it just felt right to get the whole size cup. And so these big cups had all of this real estate to be used, and they're plastic, which means that they actually hold up over time. And so they used this real estate to make these great cups. They're black background. They have a really big, bold name right on the side. They have a little run of statistics about why the player is on the USA Dream Team, and then they have a really nice shot of the player, or not a shot, but they have an artistic representation. It's, I believe, in pastel, with a pastel series of streaks behind, and they did this for every single one of the players. There are 10 players selected for every Dream Team, and then there are a couple of alternates. In the case of the Dream Team, there were two. There was Clyde Drexler and Christian Laettner. They only did cups of the 10 players on the team. So my apologies to the 3 Christian Laettner fans. They did not make a cup of his. But all 10 of the players did in fact have cups. So you have Michael Jordan. You have, they stick together. You have Larry Bird, and you have Magic Johnson. Yeah, you have Magic Johnson. So you have all of them. You have every single one of the players, the main players on the Dream Team. And so it's great because you can have the cup of whoever your favorite player is, and you can spend forever making your way down through the cup, and it takes forever to get through to the bottom of the cup. I'm sure there is a bottom of the cup. I'm pretty sure. I haven't gotten there yet. It's going to take me a while, but that was the thing. Whenever you got the supersized meal, this was the cup you got. They actually handed everybody this, whether you cared about basketball or the Olympics or not, you got it, which meant that when you were in the restaurant, everywhere around you was just a sea of these cups. Everywhere you looked, they were the cups. And it was all sorts of players. So it wasn't like there was a Michael Jordan day. Basically, as I understand it, they had stacks of 10, and then they repeat and they repeat. So they just grab one off. So you could have somebody with a Michael Jordan cup at the next table over. They may have Chris Mullin, but it was such a natural part of the experience. Everywhere you looked, everywhere you turned, when you were in the restaurant, you were surrounded by the Dream Team. And it just made it very patriotic and a very exciting experience to be a part of. And the cups they're amazing cups. They really are. They're beautiful. And so it was really fun to collect them and keep them. And the fact is, these were not made in the hundreds of thousands. These were made in the tens of millions. Because literally this was what everybody got. Most of them ended up in the trash by a large stretch. But so many have survived today that they're still really easy to get a hold of. So this is, I've actually been collecting to put the set together now, 30 years later. But it was an amazing thing that they did, and it worked so well that they were able to draw back upon this in the coming years. So after this, they had worked a pretty good relationship that had worked well for them. And so in 1993, they started a sponsorship with Michael Jordan and Larry Bird doing an ad campaign called Nothing But Net. And the idea was it's Michael Jordan and Larry Bird in a gym after hours, shooting hoops, playing horse. loser buys the fries. That is the concept. That's what they were going with. And it was a really fun ad because, among other things, it was a lot of fun just to see the one-upsmanship that they were doing, which got way out of hand. And only with these two guys did it actually make sense that this might actually work. If you've never seen the ads, they are on YouTube. Check them out. They are really cool ads. But the ad campaign was strong enough that they did do a tie-in to the restaurant, and they created a whole set of cups of nothing but net with Jordan, Larry Bird, but they also had 4 others, including Sir Charles. They had Bill Walton. They also had Dr. J. And so these cups were really pretty fun because the design was not as sophisticated as the previous year. In this case, the design is a very playful, kid-oriented design. And this is the kind of thing that O-Pee-Chee folders looked like. This was what kids' magazines looked like. So for kids, this was just natural, and that's really what they were going for. But the theme of it was MVPs. These are various MVPs from the previous years, and so that was the whole core of what tied all 6 players together. And on the back, they actually have a write-up about their MVP season, or I guess it was one of their MVP seasons. But the cups are super colorful, and that's really the fun of these cups. But on top of that, it's not just the cups. They also did a tie-in with fry containers. Now, in the previous year with the Dream Team, they did do a tie-in with NBA Hoops to make card packs. So in the restaurants, you could actually get packs of cards, which you open up and you try to put together a set with the Dream Team and the regular NBA players. And so in 1993, when they did these, they have kind of an NBA Hoops type style of a card front on here. It's not actually card front, the proportions are a little bit off, but it's very similar. It does look like it. And that is appropriate because on the back, it does not have a write-up, it just has the stats. So it's almost kind of like a card. Now, the Dream Team cups are all numbered, 1 through 10. As are the Nothing But Net cups. They're numbered 1 through 6. These are not numbered. So they are collectible, but they're not collectible in the same way as the cups. They're fry containers, so you would expect for them to be thrown away. But ironically enough, the grease, like this is a brand new one, but even the ones with the grease, that grease has more of a half-life like plutonium. So it's not really, it's not unsanitary, strangely, because it's not dietary, but there are still quite a few of these that are unused. So they did do that in 1993 where they had the cups and the fry containers that were designed very much in a collectible way. In 1994, we had another Dream Team. Now in this case, it's a little bit different because the Olympics happen every 4 years, but in between, on the other even year mark, they have a World's Championship of basketball. It's basically like the Olympics. It has the medals, but it's like a non-Olympics Olympics. And because of the 1992 Dream Team, everybody was just so excited about, well, this is what America's team is like. In 1994, they put together another one, and they called it Dream Team 2. Kind of a ridiculous name. Again, it's not the kind of thing I really need to go into, but these were players who were almost worthy of being on the Dream Team. In some cases, they kind of were, but you had players like Joe Dumars, Reggie Miller, Shaquille O'Neal. Some of these guys would even make it onto the 96 team, but these guys were seen as kind of the also-rans, and that's the way that our attitude was. So it was referred to as Dream Team 2. Did they really earn the right to be Dream Team 2? They were close enough. So McDonald's once again did their sponsorship with Dream Team 2, and these cups were not done in the same. In this case, the cups were done in definitely not the same way as either of the other two. Here they have just a basic flag or a flag design with kind of a perspective design of the player in the art. And then they have a really good name, just a quick band down the side, very clean design. Then they have a write-up. And these, again, are numbered, but in this case, they actually have all 13 players. So they even have the 3 alternates. So it is the whole team. Again, my apologies to the 3 Christian Laettner fans. That was just 1992 when they left those off. But in this case, it was all 13. These are much brighter cups. They hold up a little bit better over time. They haven't aged as poorly. They're nice, but they're not as elegant. And again, some of the players like Reggie here were great. Reggie would go on in 1996 to be on the team that really should have been called the Dream Team 2. But again, It's not quite at the same level, but they are nice cups that are very easy to get again. And these, I think you can usually get these pretty easily as a complete set if you really want to get them. But they also, again, in 1994, they did more fry containers. In this case, these are very easy to get a complete set. In this case, they didn't make all 13. They only made 11 of the players. 2 of the players just didn't show up on these. And they also made an additional one, which was the entire team. And on the back, they all have the same thing, which is just the schedule. That's all that they did for these. So it's not quite as much. And if you get the pack, understand you may not get all of them individually. When I got mine, I got 2 Derek Colemans. I'm missing another one. So whatever, just in case you care. But they did do both in this case. So unlike the 92, in fact, the 92 case was the only one where they did a national release of cups, but they didn't have corresponding fry containers. In 1995, they did a team up with Warner Brothers. And so in this case, you had an NBA player and you had a Warner Brothers character. And these cups are they go back to a black design, and there are actually 7 different cups with 1 player and 1 cartoon character on each. They don't have any write-ups or anything like that. It is just the art of the cup. And the art is a little bit better of the player. Actually, it's probably the best art of the player overall. It's actually very realistic, unlike the previous year. And some really big animation, or a big drawing of the cartoon character with a big phrase coming out of them. So that's the way that all the cups are. There's nothing really special about them, nothing really unique about them, but they were a lot more fun because this was designed for kids. And again, just like with the other 3, this was what it was at every single, or almost every single table in the restaurant when you went in there. This was what surrounded us everywhere we turned. And with these, they also did come with corresponding fry containers. And in the case of the fry containers, it's different art on the front, but on the back they actually have a write-up where on one side they talk about the basketball player, and on the other side they talk about the Looney Tunes player. Now, in case you're thinking, well, now wait a minute, what about Space Jam? Well, that was actually kind of the lead up to Space Jam. So in 1996, Space Jam would come out, and this would be a team up of obviously Michael Jordan and the cartoon characters from Warner Brothers, very specific. And they did do a tie-in, but in the tie-in they were using the wax cups, not the plastic cups. So they did not make plastic cups of all of the different players, which is kind of strange they didn't do it. It's too bad, but they did still have the fry containers. So the fry containers, we can continue with that. And they have basically art in the case of these on the front, and then on the back. Unfortunately, instead of doing a write-up that corresponds, they actually do advertising for their Happy Meal toys. And that's kind of what these are. These are basically just a bunch of Happy Meal promos, which, I mean, again, it's okay. That's what they happen to do, but that is what they went for with these. I will get to the bottom of this eventually. They followed that up, I think in the exact same year, with another basketball tie-in. In this case, it is not a tie-in like we'd been seeing. This was just some art of some basketball players. This is a big head art, is kind of the way they did it. Very much designed for kids. It's kind of a funny scene on the front with a couple of basketball players. On the back, it's a question and answer with one of the players from the front. And so every single player, or basically the players get their own, I think in one case it's 2 players that are on the back, but the players get their own back is basically the collectible side. Again, they never did numbering for any of these fry containers because, I mean, again and again, they're fry containers, so who would collect these? But for some reason we are, and I'm talking about them here nearly 30 years later, 25 years later or so. And in 1997, they did a very simplified one. Again, I got to talk about it because I'm just kind of finishing up with these, but it was just some random players. This was one of only 2 times they did the fry containers without Jordan. He wasn't in this group. And on the back, they compared the player to fries. That's what they did. But that was kind of the run, the finish of their NBA tie-ins for the national experience in the US. But they did do 2 other things that are of distinction that are kind of close. And one of those is a series of cups for Dennis Rodman. Now, Dennis Rodman was famous for a number of things, but one of them was his hair was constantly changing color. So McDonald's did a thing where they put the ink on the cup, or whatever it is on the cup, where heat changes the color of it. And the idea was it's a normal cup, and then when you put a cold drink in it, all of a sudden the hair color changes, and it goes from white to whatever color. In one case, it goes from white to off-white, but usually it changes over to a color. It could be green, it could be red. And there were 4 cups, and I think they were regional. I think they were only in the Chicago area. And the reason I say that is because I don't ever remember these, and I think I would have remembered these if they had come up. I remember all the other ones. This one I don't remember, so I think it was regional to Chicago, but they're distinctive enough you very well may run into them. But they also did another one you may run into, but much less likely, because this wasn't even American. This was Australian. So in Australia, they had one player he was basically the Australian basketball player. His name was Luke Longley. He was drafted in 1991 by the Timberwolves, and by Jordan's second three-peat, he was on the Bulls. So he actually won 3 championships with the Bulls, and he was, again, Australia's basketball player, like the Australian basketball player. And so Australia was really excited about him. And on top of that, just after the Michael Jordan Last Dance documentary, there was a documentary created about Luke Longley. I believe it is on YouTube, so definitely check that out if you're curious, because they did a whole documentary on him inspired by The Last Dance. And Michael Jordan sat down for a nearly half-hour-long interview for that documentary. And that's actually a really interesting thing to watch. I have seen that on YouTube. It's a side of Michael Jordan you just don't see, where he's talking about a teammate who wasn't a significant player, but he talks about him with respect. It's interesting to watch because it's not a Jordan you normally see. But the thing is, in Australia, Luke Longley, he was the man. And because of that, McDonald's in Australia did a whole run of 4 cups. Luke Longley, Scottie Pippen, Sir Chuck, and Sean Kemp. They did a set of these cups, and the cups look like the normal thing you'd see in America because, it's McDonald's. That's the way that they design their cups. It's a big image of the logo on one side. It's a big image of the player. And then there's also a color changing component where, again, if you get the cup cold, all of a sudden the player's number and either nickname or some phrase related to him shows up on the cup. So there's that component that goes in, which is kind of cool. But are you likely to run into these in the US? Not very. Mine, I got from Australia. So it cost me a little bit to be able to finish this video. Well, it cost me a lot to do this video, but that is something that you may see. This is just helping you to understand what in the world those are. But that's not the end of the story, because there is one other thing to talk about, which is related to the NFL. And seriously, these things are huge. And the NFL was involved in just one release of these cups. And this cup it's from 1995, when Warner Brothers was working with McDonald's. And so they did a set of 4 cups. And these cups are basically a very comic booky design. It has one of the characters and then a player and some relationship between them, and then like a play term. And in case you're wondering about the design of the cup, the actual shape of the cup, all of these cups, these big, massive cups, these are basically oversized cups. That's the whole concept, but they're also designed for balance. Well, in the 1990s, cup holders became a really big thing in cars. And I mean, we're talking to the extent where it was in standard advertising. There was one advertisement, I think it was for Subaru, where they compared a Subaru to a Corvette. And the Corvette was better in every regard except for one. The Subaru had more cup holders. That was the big thing. And it actually became a big joke with Corvette owners. But cup holders was key. But the problem is, a cup holder is not designed for this wide of a cup. And so these cups, what do you do in the car? The drive-through became a big thing in the 1990s. And so there was a special cup designed specifically for drive-throughs. Now the problem with this cup is that it creates a very top-heavy situation. You can tell that the cups are basically the same height, which means that all of the real estate lost down here has to be made up at the top, which means that if you set this down on a regular table in the restaurant and you bump that table, this cup's going over. But if you're in a car, it has the ability to just slip right in. And so that is the reason for these designs. But like I said, they're awkward if you're not in your car, and they really don't look very good, which, I mean, it really is kind of a weird thing. So these weren't done very often. But that is the reason for the design. And this is these 4 cups with Emmitt Smith, Barry Sanders, Dan Marino, and Drew Bledsoe. These are the only ones they did for the NFL on these national releases. Now, there is some regional stuff. I don't want to get into the regional stuff because it really gets kind of difficult with things like the Colorado Rockies inaugural season and whatever. But for the national level, it was just this quick little run from 1992 through 1997, basically, that this stuff was happening. And it was a very integral part of our everyday lives. So it's something that you're going to run into at some point. At some point, you are going to run into one of the cups. Probably not the fry containers, but the cups. And this is what they are. This is why they existed. This was how we experienced them. And this is getting a feel for pretty much the whole range. So again, if there is anything that I've missed, please, by all means, let me know. But other than that, this is a cool little look into it. If you're curious about my other videos, definitely check them out. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.